Richard's funeral was a blur. The gray sky matched the heaviness in my chest as I stood by the casket, clutching the hands of relatives who whispered the same tired phrases. He was a great man, he'll be missed, stay strong. None of it mattered. My husband of 30 years was gone. Emily, our only daughter, stood tall and composed, dressed in black silk with her long dark hair pinned neatly. At just 27, she carried herself with a confidence that both impressed and unsettled me. She had always been Richard's pride, sharp, ambitious, successful in her own career. Now, she seemed even more in control, as though she had stepped into a role she had been waiting for. After the burial, people gathered at our mansion. It was the house Richard and I had built together from the ground up. I had picked the tiles, the curtains, the garden roses. Every corner carried memories of our life. When the lawyer arrived that evening, I assumed it was to discuss probate and logistics. But instead, he opened a leather folder and read aloud Richard's will. The words sliced through me like cold steel. To my beloved daughter, Emily Bennett, I leave the estate at 54, Hillcrest Drive, along with all attached assets, including the beach house in Florida, the vineyard property, and my entire portfolio valued at $33 million. I trust she will honor my legacy and use these resources wisely. To my wife, Helen Bennett. My breath caught. Finally, he would mention me. I leave my love and gratitude for being my partner all these years. Silence. The room seemed to tilt sideways. I gripped the armrest of my chair, trying to steady myself. That was it? After decades of marriage, raising his child, standing by him through sickness and health, he left me nothing but love and gratitude? I turned to Emily, desperate for reassurance. She reached over, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "It's okay, Mom. Don't worry, I'll take care of you." At that moment, I believed her. She was my daughter. My only family left. Of course she would protect me. But grief does strange things to people. And money can twist love into greed faster than a storm can uproot a tree. For a while, Emily seemed kind. She told me not to stress about bills or property matters. She said, "Just focus on healing, Mom." I tried. I cooked her favorite meals, cleaned the house like I always had, tended the roses in the garden. I thought we were leaning on each other. But slowly, things began to shift. It started with small remarks. When I reminded her about paying the house staff, she replied sharply, "Mom, it's my responsibility now. Don't interfere." She sold Richard's prized Mercedes without telling me. "It was old, Mom. We need fresh energy around here." Then she locked Richard's study, the room filled with his journals, his fountain pens, his grandfather's clock. "It's mine now," she said flatly. I told myself she was grieving in her own way. But my heart grew heavier each day. One afternoon, I came home from the market to find my bedroom half-packed. My dresses folded into boxes, my shoes stacked at the door. I thought maybe she was redecorating, moving me to another room. "Emily?" I called. She appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Mom, we need to talk." Her tone sent chills down my spine. "This house, it's mine now. You know that. Dad left it to me. You can't keep living here forever like a guest who never leaves. You need to start thinking about your own life." My throat tightened. "Emily, what are you saying?" She didn't flinch. "I'm saying it's time for you to move out." The world stopped. "Move out?" "Emily, I'm your mother. This is my home. I built this life with your father." "No, Mom," she cut me off coldly. "Dad built it. He left it to me. You always told me I was independent, strong. Well, now it's your turn. Find your own life." I stared at her, searching for some trace of the little girl who once clung to my leg when she was afraid of thunderstorms. But all I saw was a stranger. That night, I slept on the couch, too stunned to fight. My mind swirled with questions. Why had Richard done this? Why leave me with nothing, trusting Emily to provide. Didn't he know people change? Then, as I lay awake, I remembered something, a key Richard once pressed into my palm just weeks before his death. He had looked at me with weary eyes and said, "Keep this safe, Helen. One day, you'll need it." At the time, I hadn't asked what it was for. But now I wondered if that key held the answers to everything. The next morning, when Emily left for work, I searched the house. The key was small, bronze, worn at the edges. I tried it on drawers, cupboards, and finally, on the locked chest in the attic. Click. Inside, I found letters. Dozens of them. Some were addressed to me, sealed but never given. Others were financial documents, handwritten notes, even old photographs of Richard with a man I didn't recognize. One letter, marked with my name, shook me to my core. "My dearest Helen. If you are reading this, it means I'm gone. I left everything to Emily not because I trusted her, but because I wanted her tested. Wealth can destroy character. I wanted to see if she would share with you, care for you, protect you as I always did. If she fails this test, then she is not ready for what truly lies ahead. In the safe deposit box at Central Bank, there is another will, my real will. You alone have the key. Trust yourself. If Emily chooses greed, then you will know what to do." My hands trembled as tears blurred my vision. Richard hadn't abandoned me. He had left me a choice. A secret. Emily thought she had won, but she had no idea that her father had set a trap, and she was walking right into it. For the first time since Richard's death, I felt a flicker of power return to me. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't alone. And I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The next morning, I slipped out of the house before Emily woke up. My heart raced as I clutched Richard's bronze key in my pocket, the letter folded safely in my purse. The Central Bank was a towering marble building downtown. My palms were slick with sweat as I approached the clerk and handed her the safe deposit box number Richard had scrawled on the envelope. She glanced at the key, then nodded and led me to a private room. When the metal drawer slid open, my breath caught. Inside was another envelope, thick and sealed with Richard's handwriting across the front, "For Helen alone." With trembling fingers, I opened it. The documents inside were unmistakable, a second will, signed and notarized. This one left the mansion, the vineyard, and a portion of the $33 million to me. Emily was still the primary heir, but Richard had ensured I was secured for life. But there was more. A small black notebook, filled with Richard's neat handwriting. Notes about Emily's spending habits, her arrogance, her entitlement. He had seen something in her that I hadn't wanted to face. "Emily is brilliant," one entry read, "but she lacks humility. If she is given everything, she may destroy herself. Helen must have the choice to step in if Emily fails." Tears rolled down my cheeks. My husband had trusted me more than I realized. He hadn't left me defenseless, he had left me the power to decide Emily's fate. I slipped the will and notebook into my bag, locked the box again, and walked out with a new sense of purpose. Back at the mansion, things had only worsened. Emily was no longer the daughter I knew. She hosted extravagant parties, inviting business associates and friends who laughed too loudly, drank too much, and left the house littered with broken glasses and spilled champagne. The once peaceful home Richard and I had built now pulsed with music and shallow laughter. I watched in silence as Emily signed checks for things she didn't need, designer clothes, luxury cars, vacations she barely planned. She dismissed the staff who had served our family for years, replacing them with strangers who treated me like an unwanted guest. When I tried to talk to her, she shut me down. "Mom, stop acting like you're in charge. This is my life now." Her eyes were cold, her words sharp. It was as if the money had poisoned her soul, stripping away the kindness she once had. One evening, I gathered the courage to confront her. "Emily, your father trusted you. He believed you would use this inheritance wisely. But look at you, you're wasting it, pushing me aside. This isn't what he wanted." She laughed, a cruel, bitter sound I barely recognized. Dad's gone, Mom. He trusted me, not you. Maybe he saw that you were weak, always depending on him. I'm not like that. I'm strong enough to live without you. Her words pierced deeper than any knife. Weak. After all the years I had sacrificed for her, for our family, she called me weak. That night, I knew. I knew what I had to do. Richard had given me the choice. Emily had failed the test. A week later, Emily dropped the final blow. I returned from the garden to find her waiting in the foyer, a set of papers in her hand. "What's this?" I asked. Her lips curled into a smirk. "An eviction notice. You have 30 days to leave. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Don't make this harder than it has to be." My knees nearly gave out. "Emily, you're really doing this?" "You'll be fine," she said casually, tossing the papers onto the table. "Find a little apartment somewhere. Live your own life. You don't belong here anymore." The cruelty in her voice shattered the last pieces of hope I had for reconciliation. I went upstairs, shut the door to Richard's study, the one I had unlocked with his key, and cried until my chest ached. But then, I opened his notebook again, tracing the words he had written. "Trust yourself, Helen. You will know what to do." And I did. I met with a lawyer the next morning. Mr. Harris, an old family friend, listened carefully as I laid out Richard's secret will and notebook. His eyes widened as he flipped through the documents. "Helen, this changes everything. This will supersede the one Emily filed. You have legal claim to half the estate, at the very least. Emily cannot evict you, she has no right." Relief washed over me, but it was bittersweet. I didn't want to destroy my daughter. I just wanted her to remember who she was. "File the documents," I told him firmly. "But don't tell Emily yet. I need to see how far she'll go." Over the next 2 weeks, I watched silently as Emily spiraled further. She hosted another lavish party, bragging about her fortune, mocking me in front of her friends. "She still thinks this house is partly hers," I overheard her saying. "Can you believe that? Poor Mom doesn't realize times have changed." Laughter erupted around her. My face burned with humiliation. That was the moment I decided Emily needed more than legal papers. She needed a lesson she would never forget. The night before the eviction deadline, I walked into the living room where Emily and her friends lounged with champagne. The music blared, but I shut it off with one flick of the switch. Emily shot up, furious. "What do you think you're doing?" I held up the envelope with Richard's real will. "I'm doing what your father wanted." The room fell silent as I laid the papers on the table. Emily's eyes darted over the words, her face paling as the reality sank in. This isn't real," she stammered. "Oh, it's very real," I said calmly. "Your father trusted me with this. He wanted to see if you would care for me, protect me, honor the family he built. Instead, you betrayed me. You betrayed him." Her friends exchanged awkward glances, then quietly slipped out, leaving us alone. Emily's mask cracked. She slammed her fists on the table. "You can't do this. Everything was mine. He promised me." "No," I said firmly, standing tall. "He gave you a chance. And you failed." Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't from remorse, they were from rage. "You've ruined everything," she screamed. "No, Emily," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You ruined yourself." The court process was swift once the second will surfaced. The estate was divided fairly, half to me, half to Emily. The eviction notice was nullified, and the mansion legally became co-owned. Emily tried to fight, but her reputation had already begun to crumble. Her reckless spending, her arrogance, her betrayal of her own mother, it all came to light. Former friends distanced themselves, and soon, her circle of admirers vanished. As for me, I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I mourned, not just Richard, but the daughter I thought I had. One evening, I found Emily sitting alone in the empty living room, her once proud shoulders slumped. She looked up at me with hollow eyes. "Why, Mom," she whispered. "Why couldn't you just let me have it all?" I sat beside her, my heart aching. Because, Emily, love isn't about taking everything for yourself. It's about sharing, protecting, and remembering the people who gave you life. Your father wanted you to learn that. I wanted you to learn that. But you chose greed over love. She turned away, silent. And in that silence, I realized the bitter truth: money can buy houses, cars, and parties, but it can't buy a daughter's heart. Months passed after the court ruling. The mansion no longer echoed with wild parties or shallow laughter. It was quiet again, too quiet at times, but at least it was peaceful. Emily lived in the East Wing, and I in the West. Though we shared the same roof, a chasm of silence stretched between us. We rarely spoke. When we did, it was clipped and cautious, as though every word carried hidden knives. But beneath my anger, a part of me still ached for the daughter I raised. I remembered tucking her into bed when she was 5, singing lullabies when storms frightened her. I remembered her teenage years, the arguments, the reconciliations, the laughter when we cooked together. Where had that girl gone? Sometimes, late at night, I would hear Emily crying in her room. But pride kept her from knocking on my door. And pride kept me from knocking on hers. Her wealth dwindled faster than even I imagined. Expensive cars sat unused in the driveway, gathering dust. Her so-called friends vanished the moment her generosity dried up. She had invested poorly, trusted the wrong people, and now the millions that once gave her power were trickling away. One morning, I found her at the kitchen table, head in her hands, bills scattered before her. "Emily?" I asked softly. She looked up, her eyes red. "I can't pay them, Mom. The staff, the taxes, everything's slipping away." For a moment, I wanted to remind her of the eviction notice she once shoved in my face. But instead, I simply said, "Your father warned me this might happen. That's why he left us both some. He wanted balance, not excess." She didn't reply. But I saw the first flicker of humility in her gaze. Weeks later, she approached me hesitantly in the garden, where I was trimming Richard's roses. "Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I was wrong." I paused, the shears still in my hand. She had never said those words before. "I thought money would make me strong," she continued, tears brimming. "I thought Dad trusted only me. But I see now. I destroyed everything. I hurt you. And I hurt him too." My chest tightened. For so long, I had longed to hear this. "Emily," I said gently, "your father didn't test you to see if you could spend money. He tested you to see if you could carry love. Love for him, love for me, love for the life he built. That was the real inheritance." She broke down then, sobbing into my shoulder like a child again. I held her, tears streaming down my own face. For the first time since Richard's death, I felt like I hadn't lost everything. It wasn't easy. Forgiveness never is. Emily had to sell the vineyard and one of the houses to pay debts. But she began working again, humbly this time, no longer flaunting her father's fortune. We started sharing meals, talking about memories, even laughing again in small doses. The bond was fragile, but it was something. One evening, we sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the garden Richard had loved so much. "Mom," Emily said quietly, "do you think Dad would forgive me?" I smiled through my tears. "He already has. He gave us both a second chance. And we're not going to waste it." She leaned her head against my shoulder, just as she had when she was a little girl. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Life after loss is never the same. I still miss Richard every day. But his wisdom guided us through the storm. He knew money could either divide or unite. And though it nearly tore us apart, it also forced us to see the truth. Emily learned that fortune without love is nothing but emptiness. And I learned that even when betrayed, a mother's heart can still choose forgiveness. Our house stood tall again, not just as stone and wood, but as a reminder. Wealth may build walls, but only love builds a home.